Welcome to Mapping Minerals Diplomacy, an explainer series that brings clarity to the deals, players, and policies shaping the global race for critical minerals. I'm your host, Gracelin, Director of the Critical Mineral Security Program at CSIS. Today, we turn to Australia, a nation long recognized as a mining powerhouse and now a cornerstone in the global race for critical minerals. Australia is home to 43 of the 55 minerals identified as critical by the U.S. Department of Energy and Interior. Mining is a backbone of the Australian economy, accounting for 14% of Australia's GDP, compared to just 4% of Canada's and 1.3% of the United States GDP. Australia is home to one of the biggest sources of mineral financing through the Australian Stock Exchange. It's also a hub of expertise, home to 4 of the world's top 12 mine engineering programs. Given the scale of the financial and human capital alongside the significant mineral reserves, achieving mineral security without Australia is virtually impossible. Australia stands as one of America's closest allies and most trusted partners, with a relationship that has long underpinned both national and economic security. For more than a century, U.S. and Australian forces have fought shoulder to shoulder in every major conflict since World War I, beginning with the Battle of Hamel in 1918. In fact, Australia is the only country to fight alongside the United States in every major war. Let's take a deeper look at the bilateral relationship. The 2014 U.S.-Australia Force Posture Agreement, signed during the annual Osman talks, put the alliance into action by expanding joint military capacity, strengthening collaboration across land, sea, air, and space, and launching a range of new cooperative initiatives. In 2021, the Allies marked the 70th anniversary of the Australia-New Zealand-United States Treaty, a cornerstone of their security partnership. In September 2021, Australia, the United Kingdom, and the United States launched AUKUS, a trilateral security pact designed to significantly bolster defense and strategic cooperation among the 3 nations. Additionally, Australia's role in the Quad, a strategic partnership between the U.S., Australia, Japan, and India, has further elevated its role in advancing shared security in the Indo-Pacific. Economic ties between the 2 countries are equally strong. Since the U.S.-Australia Free Trade Agreement took effect in 2005, U.S. exports of goods and services to Australia have nearly doubled. In 2023, two-way trade reached $47.1 billion, with the United States enjoying a $14.4 billion surplus. Australia has likewise been an essential partner in mineral security. In 2023, the U.S. government designated Australian critical minerals as domestic sources under U.S. law, making Australian firms eligible for U.S. Department of Defense procurement programs. Taken together, these defense, economic, and strategic linkages highlight the depth and resilience of the U.S.-Australia partnership. Of course, China looms large. For years, it has been Australia's top minerals customer, especially for iron ore. But with relationships strained and Beijing's market leverage under scrutiny, Canberra is accelerating diversification. Australia has hardened its posture towards China. In 2018, it became the first country to bar Huawei from building its 5G network, citing national security risks and the danger of foreign control over critical infrastructure. That same year, the Department of Education introduced measures to shield the higher education and research sector from foreign interference. More recently, Australia announced plans to establish a strategic mineral reserve to lessen dependence on China, and tied federal financing for Iluka Resources' rare earths refinery to offtake agreements with like-minded partners. Let's turn to the data to see why Australia is crucial. First, Australia is very well endowed with critical minerals. Here on the screen, we have a narrowed periodic table with the elements identified as critical by the U.S. Department of Energy and Interior. Australia is home to 43 of these 55 minerals. In fact, Australia has the largest iron ore, rutile, uranium, and vanadium and zinc deposits in the world. The second largest cobalt and lithium and tungsten deposits, the third largest bauxite, copper, and tin deposits, the fourth largest manganese deposits, and sixth largest antimony, molybdenum, and rare earths deposits. Second, Australia continues to attract a significant amount of mineral exploration. In 2024, it attracted $2 billion in mineral exploration, the second highest in the world after Canada. It's particularly difficult to see a world where the United States and its allies strengthen access to secure rare earth supply without Australia. Rare earths are the critical choke point where geopolitics collides with industrial fragility. In April 2025, China's Ministry of Commerce struck back against U.S. tariff hikes with sweeping export controls on 7 heavy rare earths, indispensable to defense platforms, clean energy innovation, semiconductors, and automotives. In 2024, Australia attracted $64 million in rare earth exploration investment, 5 times the amount of the second largest recipient, Brazil. Australia accounted for nearly half of global rare earth exploration and had over 89 projects in total, compared to 18 in Canada, 13 in Brazil, and 12 in the United States. Australia is positioning itself as a leading force in rare earth production and processing. Already the world's 4th largest producer, it is expanding domestic processing capacity, including the Iluka Rare Earths Refinery in Western Australia, supported by a $1.25 billion government loan tied to offtake with like-minded countries. Third, Australian capital markets are crucial to reducing reliance on China. The Australian Stock Exchange is the second largest for junior and mid-tier mineral financing after the Toronto Stock Exchange, but its listed companies rank higher in market value than those on Toronto's exchange, second only to Asian exchanges. Australia stands as perhaps the United States' most indispensable ally in the quest for mineral security. With unmatched geological endowments, world-class mining expertise, and a regulatory system trusted by global investors, Australia is uniquely positioned to supply the raw materials and refined products that power defense technologies, clean energy, and advanced manufacturing. The country is not just a resource base. It is a strategic partner whose alignment with U.S. security and economic objectives make cooperation in critical minerals both natural and essential. Simply put, achieving resilient and secure supply chains without Australia is impossible. And with that, I'm honored to welcome the Honourable Dr. Kevin Rudd, Australia's 26th Prime Minister and now its Ambassador to the United States. A statesman with decades of leadership at the highest levels, Ambassador Rudd is one of the world's foremost authorities on U.S.-China relations, a prolific thinker, and the author of several influential books. Ambassador Rudd, thank you for joining us today.
Good to be with you.
Australia is the only country that has fought beside the U.S. in every major conflict for the last 100 years, which means it is crucial to our national security. We also have frameworks like the Posture Initiative, Quad, AUKUS. Now, mineral security has increasingly become a national security imperative. Where do you see the strategic areas of cooperation as it relates to mineral security going forward?
Well, the bottom line is the United States, following President Trump's directive, needs to invest heavily in order to secure its own supply chains for critical minerals and rare earths. The United States has identified 50 or 55 critical minerals which are essential for the future functioning of its economy and its defence establishment. Australia is well positioned to work with the US on this because we do equal the periodic table. We have the biggest mining companies in the world. We don't just mine in something like existing 32 projects in Australia. We've now moved into 2 advanced processing projects as well. So we believe that we are therefore an appropriate partner for the US in securing the President's objectives.
Now, one of the big dominant holds that we have had to contend with lately is China's dominance in rare earths. And rare earths are needed for defense technologies, automotive manufacturing, and a range of industries. Now, Australia is really emerging as the top destination for rare earth investment. Last year, we saw that they got nearly half of the world's global exploration investment. Now, when we look at things like processing, we see things like Linus and Iluka coming up, which are really transforming the market. How do you see Australia positioning itself to be a more competitive force in the processing sector?
Well, this is a top strategic priority for the Australian Prime Minister and for the Australian government. Secondly, it builds on the fact that Australia is the largest mining country in the world. This is a high technology business. And thirdly, we can see how critical this is for our friends, partners and allies around the world. But the PM has also decided that in order to demonstrate our good faith, that we need to put our money where our mouth is. So there is something like an $18 billion US investment on our part in terms of securing projects for the future. For example, a critical minerals facility of some $3.4 billion. On top of that, we have a tax incentive policy running in the vicinity of 11 to 12 billion US, together with specific investment funds which support investment in Australia's high north. Add to that our critical minerals strategic reserve. We are putting our best foot forward and working intimately with the United States on how these resources are deployed.
Now, do you see, you mentioned the strategic reserve, and obviously here in the US, we're looking at the same thing. There was a $2 billion allocation in our budget bill this year to build those stockpiles. How do you potentially see that collaboration working? Because these are two of the front runners on stockpiling now.
Yeah, the Australian Strategic Reserve for critical minerals was established by the Prime Minister recently. Initially, it has an allocation of some 1.4 billion US. It will be critical in establishing a series of offtake agreements with users of these resources in Australia, and B, associated pricing arrangements as well. But on top of that, beyond our own national security and national economic needs, we stand ready to work with the United States in the development of its strategic reserves in, shall I say, the top tier critical minerals and rare earths, which are of most fundamental significance to US defence needs now.
Now, as a long-term expert on the great power competition, one of the ways that China has established this dominance is by distorting the market, producing so much that is forcing Western companies to go out of business. How do you see price floors fitting in from the Australian side to creating a more resilient alternate market?
Well, pricing is a key question. We can't avoid that. It's just part of the logical framework for creating an effective ecosystem. Having supply is critical, having investment capital is critical, having the technological know-how of how to get this stuff out of the ground and then how to process it. These are all essential prerequisites, but unless you have offtake arrangements which are capable of securing a price which guarantees the long-term viability of these projects, it won't work. Therefore, those who are taking offtake from these arrangements and from these mines and processing facilities across the United States and Australia will need to embrace the fact that there will be a premium for security of supply. How that is achieved in terms of the particular pricing formula is the subject of intense internal work within the governments of the United States and Australia as we speak. Floor pricing is one approach. There are other approaches as well. The key thing, though, is to make the viability of these projects hold up for the long term, given the alternative pressures which are alive within the system, namely the use of Chinese industrial policy.
And the Australian production tax credit is such an important tool that I know the US is now looking at revisiting it, learning from Australia. Perhaps that's one of the biggest things we can do to counter China, is to learn what's working in both of these markets. My final question is this, minerals are such an important part of the Australian economy. I mean, we're looking at 14% of GDP. How is this shaping Australia's economic and security strategy?
Well, we do see ourselves objectively as a critical minerals and rare earths, but frankly, broader resource powerhouse for the world. That's how nature has endowed us. That's how history has enabled us to develop the biggest, best, most efficient mining companies in the world. So now partnering with government It's raising our level of global ambition to work with the G7 framework on critical minerals, to work with the quadrilateral critical minerals initiative, and bilaterally with the United States to help secure this gap in long-term security of supply for US allies, friends and partners across the world. So we see that as our strategic mission. We will work closely with the United States in how we give effect to it, and mindful of our obligations with our other critical trading relationships.
It's definitely a very exciting relationship and a very important topic at the time, and I look forward to seeing how this relationship develops in the months and years to come. Ambassador Rudd, thank you so much for joining us today.
Good to be with you.
And with that, that brings us to the end of this episode of Mapping Minerals Diplomacy. In future episodes, we'll explore how other countries are shaping their minerals diplomacy strategies and how the U.S. can better deploy tools to compete. Thanks for watching. I'm Gracelin Bascarin. See you next time on Mapping Minerals Diplomacy.